Hi, and welcome to our podcast show. I'm Winston.
And I'm Steven.
And today we have a special guest. Yes, it's my brother, Yao. He's a seasoned IT professional with over 15 years experience specializing in servers, cybersecurity, programming, and he knows everything from Linux to databases and beyond. So we'll be covering some of the topics, some interesting topics today. Steven.
Okay, I got a question here.
Yeah.
Is he really your brother, or is he the guy that you drink with and you call him my brother when you're drunk?
Yes, he's really my blood-related brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to get that out of the way.
He's the one I go to if we have a problem with my website, all the back-end stuff, if the website get crashed or hacked. Yeah, he'll fix it. Yao. So let me begin and introduce my brother Yao. And yes, tell us where you're based and what's your profession. You don't have to tell me the company that you work for, but yeah, go ahead.
Yes, my name's Yao. I am more of a systems engineer, moving into cybersecurity, but I've done cybersecurity for the past 2 years now, and it was probably an opportunity provided to me at the place of my work. So I kind of almost fell into it, and it's quite interesting. So I, took it on board. I originally started off with programming, really, doing web application programming, not so much website programming, because obviously website programming is more to do with HTML and JavaScript, but more of kind of application and logic application behind it. And then I did a bit more on databases, Oracle, and then more on system, configuration, Linux and Windows and things like that.
All right.
Before I kind of went to cybersecurity.
Yeah, so this is a hot topic, cybersecurity, and as you know, lots of things happening in the cyber world. And so I would like to take this opportunity to cover some of the exciting topics with Yao, such as hacking, cybersecurity, bots, algorithms, and things like that, and how to better protect ourselves in the future from cyber attacks. So with that, before we continue, I would just like to give you an update, guys. I've got this new mic, as you can see, and thanks to Steven. Yes, he's the guy who actually donated this, and of course, I'm sounding a little bit better with my little sexy voice with this mic. Steven?
You give me way too much credit. I only you bought the mic.
Oh yeah.
I gave you the stuff to attach it to your system. That's basically about it. But there's a very interesting story about that microphone.
Oh.
And I don't think we covered it in the last show, but that's the same microphone that the presidential podium uses.
Oh.
So people like Obama, Al Gore, which is not named after algorithm, have used that microphone to address the masses.
Oh, so I have a presidential voice.
That's right. Yep.
Nice.
Depicted well.
Okay, cool. So continue back to the topic then. So, how did you get involved with the tech and IT? And of course, back in the early days with servers and things like that, was this something that you learned from the beginning? I remember when I first started, it was all about tinkering different hardware and getting things to work. And I remember when we were kids, I would set up a computer and then we like, oh, let's go with some gaming. And then the internet was slow at the time, but we built up servers and stuff like that, didn't we? So carry on and tell us how you got involved into more tech and IT and stuff like that.
I remember when I was young.
Yeah.
Can you remember our uncle? He was a really,
Uncle George.
Yeah, he was a really good programmer.
Yeah.
And he's probably one who kind of really inspired me to become to go into not IT but more of computer programming and things like that. Because I remember he was working on something to do with
wasn't it
ray tracing?
Ray tracing, a Rubik's cube.
Ray
imagine
tracing Rubik's cube, yeah. But
a
obviously
3D model, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that NVIDIA, NVIDIA now has RTX ray tracing, real-time ray tracing. Back then, it wasn't real-time. It was just pure ray tracing. You'd have to, render it. You have to wait for it to be rendered.
it's all
there
to
is-
do with maths calculation and stuff like that, right?
Exactly,
And
yeah.
remember, this was back in the 386 days. I remember because he was in my other room. I can remember he was downstairs, and as a 3D model of a Rubik's cube. But wait, the Rubik's cube is 3x3, right? So he did the programming. I think it was C++, object-oriented program, but it wasn't just a 3x3. It was a 27x27. Now work that out. Maths all and doing all that kind of rotating. It was phenomenal.
3D, yeah,
the
dragging
way he did
the
that.
Rubik's cube and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It was-
I remember he didn't have any what was it? The libraries or the framework. It was just pure code. And I thought, wow. And but yeah, that probably inspired you, my brother. Yeah. So
It
so with that,
inspired me to study programming. Yes, for definite. And then obviously with you and our older brother who opened up the shop, then that got me into the kind of the more technical computer, hardware type of things before I went into university to study computer science. So I think it was all kind of inspired by my uncle, really.
Excellent.
And then
'cause
obviously Winston kind of encouraged me to look into server configuration and things like that. Not server, Linux, because I don't know if can you remember there's like 2 or 3 guys who came into the computer shop. They looked like proper, how would you say,
geeks.
geeks.
They were
bearded and they looked like proper Linux, seasoned Linux users. Gurus.
So
Yeah,
they were
I remember
hipsters.
them. Yeah. So Stephen,
hipsters,
you know
right?
a couple of gurus, right?
Gurus on what? Like IP and
Gurus
stuff
of
like that?
everything. Yeah, you like photography gurus, you got audio gurus, but these guys, I remember, they were like bearded with the hair everywhere,
Long
and
hair.
They were the Linux gurus, and at the time it was we wanted to run something in I think it was a server, right? It was a game server because we were heavy into gaming back then. We're early, late teens, early 20s, and to get the having a LAN party with your favorite games, and you needed the server, and we were looking into playing around with that. And at the same time, this is how we started the website. And but yeah, it was interesting how we got involved with that side of things. We literally learned from scratch on how to set up Linux, which is basically one of the operating systems.
The very early days of internet. Oh, not very early days. Kind of, almost kind of the second generation of internet when it was Netscape and things like
Mozilla.
that.
That kind of stuff.
Mozilla was just starting and things like that.
Yeah.
And I remember you used to work with the NTL.
That's right.
Cable company. Remember you? Mentioned
that's right.
in your first
First IT job.
Yes, exactly.
Now,
And,
NTL, in the big scheme of things, NTL are they the biggest, the medium, or the baby brother of the telecoms in the UK?
In the UK, I believe they were
Quite small.
one of the biggest, but yet much smaller than the mainstream British telecom. Communication supplier.
Yeah, because when I joined, NTL was only in certain areas of the UK. It wasn't nationwide. It only covered maybe 4 or 5 towns and maybe a couple of provinces or counties, we call them. And but eventually, NTL was bought out by Cable and Wireless, and then that part was then covered a larger area with more cities, and eventually then Virgin Net bought them up. So it became Virgin Net basically.
Yeah. So for our Canadian listeners, basically it would be like Bell and Rogers, which are the 2 big telecoms, and TELUS, of course. So the big 3, and then this tiny little carrier, I guess, would be in proportion to them would be the same as a regional ISP, like a Delta Telecom, which only operates in Delta, BC, and also Tech Savvy, which operates around the province of BC, but in limited pockets, and they would license the bandwidth from one of the larger carriers. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. So imagine
sort
a
of.
bigger...
I think NTL. I think NTL actually physically ran cables under the road.
Definitely. Yeah.
You know,
So they did have their own cable.
They did have their own cable,
that's correct.
proper coaxial cable.
Okay.
They ran it under. They dug up the road, sidewalks, you usually call them, and ran the cable, fed the cable underneath the sidewalks. Whereas British Telecom, they had very old age copper cables which were hung above on telegraph poles.
Those telephone poles, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
this
then
is
eventually,
different.
exactly. Eventually, NTL then eventually slowly swapped out those coax cables to fiber optic. Is that right?
Mm.
So that's why.
right, yeah.
That's what now we have, FTTH, fiber to the home.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes a lot more sense, because here, what happens is that during the .com boom, TELUS and a few other people laid fiber rings all over Vancouver because it was supposed to be, like a tech hub, right? So when the .com bust came, the fiber stayed dark. And then when it was time to upgrade the infrastructure from the coax and the copper and everything like that, the next step for most of these carriers were fiber optic, right? However, if you wanted to be a small player in the game, according to the CRTC, you can apply for a license and use the existing backbone from one of these large carriers. They would have to give you wholesale rates, and you can market the service to regional areas that they may not be in. It's kind of like all the wireless carriers in the UK, where there's like 3 and like other like O2. So it's more like that in Canada rather than what you described, which is like a new carrier coming in. We have this plot of space, and we are running all the infrastructure for you. So it's a little bit different.
I think NTL or Virgin Media now, they have the monopoly on the underground fiber optic cables, whereas British Telecom, they own all the copper telegraph poles and telephone lines, but the smaller ISPs, they buy the license off British Telecom to be able to serve out the. So I think Virgin Media pretty much has the monopoly on the underground cable.
That's interesting to know, because
I think so.
Virgin,
anyway, it might have changed. I'm not sure, but.
I remember Virgin Net was still quite small back in the day. I'm talking way back, when I first joined, and they were offering 3 months trial and this kind of stuff.
Oh, talk about that, yeah. I remember back in the day when we had 56k modem. Remember, right?
Yeah.
I remember. What was it? I used to set up a Linux server as a router instead of having a normal. Instead of having a computer directly connected to
that's right,
6K modem.
Back in the day, they didn't have any routers as
No.
such. They had
exactly.
you're connecting to a computer, and that was it. And
that's it.
Yeah, it was only when the internet age with more fiber optics and like LAN connections, then they had the firewall and
the routers and everything. Exactly. Yeah.
But so you were running a computer as a router.
I was running a Linux server as a router, so I could have multiple computers behind that router access the internet, and also run the web server. And I remember, I'm not sure, are we allowed to mention about the NTL special number? There's a special number, right, which you could dial up on the 56k modem. And you can connect to it for hours, right?
Yeah, non-stop, no break.
Actually, no, it wasn't non-stop. It was cut every 4 hours.
And then it was auto. We would auto dial.
I would set my Linux to auto dial. That same number, so it continues that connection. Then
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. But your phone bill would be absolutely astronomical
if we didn't, right? But we had zero cost because it was a free phone number.
Was it a free phone number?
Yeah, of course it is. It was a free phone number. There's no way I'll be paying like hundreds of dollars of bills of phone calls. It was a 0800 number free access number, but it would give you that internet connection for, like I said, 4 hours non-stop, and after 4 hours it would cut, right? Because it was just something that they do. It was, probably in
a timeout thing or whatever it is. Yeah.
So for us then to continue with that connection, we would auto dial. But I'm not sure if you did a script or something on the
yeah.
web server that will auto connect every 4 hours.
Well, no,
to get that line up and running.
It would detect that line dropped or connection drop, and then it'll redial it.
And it will auto dial and reconnect, and then we have a web server running 24/7.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Nice.
Just, those things that we used to do. Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay, now,
but
I have a Canadian thing to ask. All right, so I work with this. I used to work with this Irish guy.
Yeah.
And he would say router, not router. So what's the proper way to say it in UK language?
I would say router.
It is a router. Okay.
Yeah. Check it out, Stephen. I used to say router, right? I used to say router, and then when I went to the Hong Kong to work, and then I'm now in Canada, I'm router now. I don't know why. It just changed. But yeah, but if I'm going back to UK, it'll be router.
I just wanted to know. So fun fact,
I can
in
say
the UK,
both. I can say both.
It is router in the UK. It is router in North America, including Mexico.
In the rest of the world, maybe even in the rest of the world as well.
Potentially.
Yeah, I think how router got this name is because you plan your route.
Yeah,
to
you
go
route
somewhere.
You route the traffic.
Right? So it's a router. But in the US and Canada, do you plan your route or you plan your route?
Plan your route. Because a router would be roto-router, which would be like digging holes in the ground. Or you're plumbing. That's routing.
Tooth canal, right?
Tooth canal, root canal. Root canal.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's funny.
All right, continue. That was something I need to get off my chest here.
Yeah. So with a very nice kind of varied knowledge in terms of tech and stuff like that. Me and my brother have been working on all kind of projects and stuff like that. So yeah, what's your current project right now? I remember you told me you're getting like you're hacking this IKEA desk to do some made up router server switch thingy, but like all these projects that you've been working on are interesting because some of the stuff you get are not actually available online, from a retail store. These are like specialist equipment with like, you can get motherboards with like 10 or 8 LAN ports, right? And there are certain like boards which are only server spec, which you can't even get on, retail stores. So tell me some of the projects you've been working on and even some of the cloud stuff you're working on as well.
Yeah, I did have a plan to kind of, set up kind of a little IKEA lack table, right? with kind of 19-inch rack servers in there, and then obviously the cloud stuff came in. I thought there's no point me having these servers in my room anymore. I can just use AWS Cloud or Google Cloud or Microsoft Cloud. So that project kind of slowly dived down now. But so nowadays I've been trying to kind of program little microservices, as they call them. Right. So, for example, the price was it the
rig builder you did for the website,
the rig builder for your website, and also I've been doing a vulnerability scan reporter.
This is all software that you've written with the code, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And then as a hobby project, then I don't know if you can see in my background, there's a 3D printer there. See it?
Yeah, you mentioned about that. So that's another thing that people are hot on. It's a really hot topic. People using 3D printers now. You can build them. They used to buy them, and it was something that you couldn't really build, but you used to buy them. But now you can actually build them. And with all these Arduino boards, did they call them Arduino? So, Stephen, you heard about them?
Yeah, Arduino and Raspberry Pi boards,
One of my friends is one of the foremost experts in 3D printing in Canada, and he worked with an artist in Canada to print Canadians. So they would have these like a series of 3D printers. They would scan you, and they would print these 3D printed busts of you, and they would give them to you as part of an art installation. In Canada. So this is what Canada looks like, 3D printed.
Okay. So with knowledge of 3D printing, I mean, how long does it take to actually print something? Does it take minutes or hours, or how is it something that's speed up over the time?
Well, let's say, right, I've been printing like simple sample stuff, calibration cube like this. It took me at least about 30 to 45 minutes just to calibrate my 3D printer.
Okay.
And then I printed this kind of corner block thing, right? That took about 3 hours, I think.
Wow.
I was thinking,
But is it
what's
solid?
taking this so long? It is quite strong. You know, I'm bending it with quite a lot of force, and it is quite solid. I'm quite surprised at how solid it is. So, so the next step now for me is to kind of build an enclosure around that, because apparently, obviously having PLA filaments.
So is it noisy for a start?
Number one, it is noisy when it starts going.
Okay.
Because the fans are going full blast.
Oh, right, because
it needs to
the
cool
heating
it down.
elements.
The
Okay.
heating elements, and also needs to cool it down after it's laid that layer, a
Right.
layer down.
Right.
And also, another thing is obviously,
Like you
what
mentioned,
they
the
call
filaments.
the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds that it may,
Right.
eject.
So you
into
probably
the air.
need to get a open window, make sure that's ventilated.
Apparently,
and
you're not meant to let a cool breeze blow over your prints.
Yeah, the
Otherwise it will
temperature
ruin
needs
it.
to
Yeah,
stay
the
constant.
temperature needs to stay stable.
Oh,
but
okay.
you
So
need-
let
you
it
need-
naturally cool rather than trying to force cool it.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. So another way of doing it is putting a kind of a filter next to it. Or I'm going to build an enclosure first, and then I'm going to put a HEPA activated carbon filter within that enclosure, so that at least then.
Okay. So you gotta get some filter in there.
Yeah,
protect
exactly.
some
Yeah.
of the airflow.
I mean, they say
Okay.
PLA is not. I wouldn't say it's not. It's not as toxic as the ABS plastics and things like that, but it still produces some.
Yeah.
And it's like almost like if you don't do something about it, it's almost like habitual smoking. You will.
Right. You're
Yeah.
gonna get that. Yeah. So it's important to have that ventilation as well.
Yes, ventilation and
I've never
filtration,
had a 3D printer. I've always wanted one though, because I've seen a couple of people building stuff in the modding community, and they're starting, printing these 3D parts for the models, and it's amazing what stuff you can do with it.
Yeah, well, this one here is kind of half pre-built. You've got a flat base, and you've got the gantry. All it is, two parts plugged together, and you've got a 3D printer. And the software is just easy to use.
Another thing
as well.
I was mentioned about the software, is it something that you can get off the internet, or is it pre-programmed, or could you, for example, design something on I don't know, whatever, say
Thingiverse.
Photoshop,
or
whatever.
So, number one, the software on the printer itself is built in,
Programmed.
built into the board, obviously.
Yeah.
But you can upgrade the software and firmware on there.
And you control that on
then-
the PC when you load up the software, right?
No, I don't control that on the PC.
It's a memory card, right?
It's a memory card. Basically, you put your 3D printing files on the memory card, stick it in the machine, and then there's a menu in there where you can choose your 3D print and just print it. Obviously,
in the
you need
UK,
to prep the unit first. Obviously.
Is the UK like in the UK? You still use the STL file format, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's the same as in Canada. Like
Yeah.
nothing changes.
Nothing changes. International. When it comes to computer, it's national.
Okay, good.
But what about the designs? You could design that on your computer first, don't you? Right?
You could, like Stephen said, you can download pre-designed 3D models.
Put them onto the memory stick, whatever.
Or you can use Blender, you can use CAD software, you can use 3ds Max or whatever it is, create your 3D models, and then put it into what they call a slicer software, which will take your 3D models and put layers, slice it in layers. So that's how 3D printer prints, in layers.
Okay.
So it'll do that for you, and then fill in the holes, give you supports where things are like overhanging, for example. Otherwise, it'll just go. So.
All right.
It's
so with that, I mean, you're of course, me and yourself are into tech, so we can understand that. Looking at the instructions, we can build it, we can test it, and stuff like that. What about normal consumers, right?
This
People
one, I have no idea about 3D printing and things like that. That's why I bought it, just out of curiosity. And I thought,
perfect.
How easy is it? And this particular model is a Creality Ender 3, right?
That's the good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
It's a really good budget model. Really good budget. Sub £500 or sub $600.
$700.
Yeah,
yes.
sub $600.
You can upgrade the snot out of that thing. You can. It's like a hot rod. It's addictive. You can get new nozzles. You can have like these temperature controlled heating elements that you can put on there. You can do better gantry based, like all sorts of things. Like I have a friend that is like all into this, and I've seen some of the stuff that he's done.
I went all out on that one. Straight off the bat, I just got everything. This is the latest and the greatest. Kit. Yeah, exactly. I just literally got that 2 weeks ago. So it's the latest and the greatest. So it's got all the bells and whistles on there.
Yeah, there's a Chinese company. They're a Chinese company, Creality. And one of the funny things is that Creality made its name on Amazon, right? So Amazon basically made Creality a home brand for 3D printing for all enthusiasts. Everyone would buy their parts from there, and then they would get into the forums and they would actually trade parts, do all the cool kind of, like trading recipes, right? But the funny thing is that we heard very, very recently, and they're probably right into production now, is that Amazon will start to make their own 3D printer and drop it into the marketplace, as they do, because they find things are super popular. They copy the snot out of them, and then they kick you out.
Additionally, right? I hear that they're going to stop other retailers from selling 3D printers on Amazon platform, apparently.
Monoprice will be dead. A whole bunch of them will be gone, which is unfortunate because the reason why 3D printing grew so rapidly was because of the sharing of knowledge, all the parts, all the modding and everything, just like PC DIY. So it's unfortunate that Amazon has to take the stand to stomp out competition. I hope they don't. But maybe something cool will come out of this in the respect that the library of files that they can create, which might be paid, can be actually shared to the free community as well too after a certain time. We don't know, right? We don't know what Amazon's plans are. All we know is that Jeff Bezos needs more money.
Yeah. I've got a feeling that they'll probably sell consumer ready or easy to build 3D printers, and then obviously they like the rumors say they will probably block ready-made 3D printers from being sold, but I reckon parts will still be available. That's what I think.
Yeah. Cool.
Because at the end of the day, Amazon are selling to the consumer end user market, so that's where they're trying to aim at. That's what I feel anyway. But
this might open the door to hacking potentially, because I know that Amazon likes all their stuff to work with Alexa. Right? So potentially this printer, whatever they come out with, will probably have Alexa voice control, getting back into cybersecurity. What if it can print anything?
Print me something rude.
Rude things coming out of your printer.
That's it. I mean, that's it. I remember Star Trek, and then there's like the what do you call them? Is it the emulator thingy where they just bring up the food up the tray?
Replicator.
Replicators.
Yeah, that's it.
So something like that would be 3D printed. Would be something you can replicate food. And they could do that. They've done that with the the organic vegetable meat things.
Oh yeah, that stuff looks gross.
Like that. And that's it. They can print. You can actually print food now, right? And 3D printing is probably the early stage of it. So yeah. But yeah, moving on. We got like hacking. I mean, come on. I mean, okay, let's before we start with that, we got a job opening. Yes.
Oh,
and that's
who we're
right.
hiring.
Yeah, we're looking for a sponsor.
Apply now.
So, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, if you're after, your sponsorship, then that's what we're after, because we need sponsors. So if you like our content and you want to, just get on the show, and we can help you out with some of the exposure that you need to get your product out there or to get your services. So, we need sponsors.
We'll work for coffee.
Great. So, introduction with Yao, that was all good. And, of course, we have some the background information of what stuff that we've done in the past. And then moving on to his specialty, of course, is hacking and cybersecurity. So, we've all heard like large companies and people's accounts getting hacked. How frequent is this happening, and how serious should we be concerned, Yao?
Well, ever since obviously the pandemic kicked in, everyone is working from home, and it was probably a catalyst of that's kind of started hackers to target actual end users, especially people working from home,
right?
Because now they've gone from depending obviously on the companies who can or cannot afford the IT infrastructure and the support as well. You can imagine those who can afford the complete IT package will have security as part of their policy. So, which means they may get their employees to take home their the company's built laptop so that they know it's secure. Some companies might not be able to afford that, so therefore they might need to get their employees to use their own home computer to log into work or access data. That is where
the vulnerability
is the target, for the attackers.
Yeah.
So the attackers would probably, send in would either try to phish, typical phishing attacks. So that would mean sending a scam email pretending to be a legitimate company, saying you've got a package.
You get like emails from PayPal.
Exactly, PayPal
eBay
or
saying,
delivery
your account's
company
been compromised.
Exactly, or delivery company saying, you've got a package or parcel that needs to be picked up, but we can't deliver it. Click on this link. Somebody clicks on that link, and boom, your computer goes.
It just takes one click.
That's it, exactly. Yeah, that's where the attackers are aiming is the actual end users, because not everyone is cyber aware, cybersecurity aware, so that's where most of the weakness is now. So that's how they're getting into the system.
In terms of hacking, how easy is it to hack? So it's literally just a one click and you're done, right? And that kind of when you did that click, it sends information to the hacker, or what actually happens in that in your knowledge? What do you think?
There are two areas really. Like I said, if you're trying, it's not easy to attack a company directly, because they will have firewalls, protections, and things like that. And also the application. If they're serving out an application, they have web application firewalls
regions,
and things like that, right?
Firewalls.
And the other area is obviously, like I said, is attacking the employee of that company or individuals. Even if they're not, working for someone, that is an easier target, right?
So it's basically an individual with who are not cyber aware. And they're vulnerable, like with passwords such as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And I know people who have passwords like that.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. and or their systems aren't up to date or patched up, or the antivirus isn't up to date. I know a lot of people just don't bother updating, and we need to make sure to the viewers out there, updates are important because of protections from hackers and vulnerabilities and things like that. So we should always update, and of course, before you update, make sure you back up your stuff, right? Yeah,
that's another stuff we need to talk about. But yeah, carry on.
And then what else is there? There's, I think, you got to also think about the impact as well of the attack as well, because a lot of people think, right, the impact of the attack would affect it technically, so the website's offline, or someone stole some data. What else is there? They defaced the system and everything. But you also need to consider, right, it is a cyber crime, right, and any crime will have a victim. Okay, so the impact is not just technical, it's also impact in terms of legal terms, and also impact in terms of psychological. So the person who's been attacked or had their systems hacked, and they had their data stolen and or their bank account completely emptied, they are a victim. They will feel absolutely guilty, they will feel gutted, and it has a psychological effect on them. Especially if they are, working for, a company, and that company is affected because that employee has, divulge
Yeah.
the information accidentally, or not accidentally, through that attack. They feel absolutely dreadful. They feel at fault, and they shouldn't really, because they were subject to a very sophisticated, very complex or
sophisticated attack. Yeah. I mean, we've heard news recently, last year and the year before, about certain American utility companies. They were attacked, and one guy received an email from he was probably just in the admin office. He clicked on it, and it was a ransomware.
Yep.
And the ransomware is basically all the files are locked, protected, or with encryption, and they can't access all the data. For example, if they had all the files that they needed for payroll, for paying bills, and all that kind of stuff, invoicing out, invoicing in, and it was all encrypted with this ransomware software, which they're unbreakable.
Yeah.
And so the guys then, what do? There's a contact email address or a phone number that you need to contact to tell them to decrypt, but you need to pay.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's usually, unfortunately, this is where cryptocurrencies are get a bad name. Is they usually pay in either Bitcoin or ETH, whatever cryptocurrency, to give you that kind of code to decode and get that decrypted. But yeah, we've heard news about that. Ransomware is one.
I think that is the main attack vector for the attacker, because ransomware is at the end of the day they want the money at the end of the day. So and continuing on the impact, it's not just, like I said, not just the impact on the technical stuff, the impact on the legal side of things, the PR of the company as well. So public relations ruin your reputation. Like psychological, individual psychological, but not only individual psychology of the victim, but also the effort and psychology of the team, which needs to recover the systems and the data.
Team building, team trust, that all help.
Not team building, not team trust. I mean about the amount of effort. You're talking about a IT team which needs to recover the systems. The cleanup, exactly. Recovery and cleanup.
Right.
They will. It takes them 6 to 12 months to do a full-on cleanup and recovery.
Oh, nightmare!
Yeah. So you're there literally working almost 24/7, if not 18 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And this is the part of the job that you do as well, right? Not the cleanup, but obviously the prevention of such an attack.
Prevention.
What you call
prevention?
What's the word?
Cyber incident response.
Right.
Incident response. So you need to do that as well. So if something happens, you need to make sure you have the steps in place to number one, investigate, or rather triage the actual event that's happening. So try and block it straight away, and then you need to put it through analysis and investigation to see what has gone on, what's going on, and what data has been lost or leaked out, or basically to see the impact of that particular attack. And then obviously you have the obligation to report to your authorities and
customers.
Also the potential people who have had the data
infected.
Crazy.
Because it's
now, speaking of reports,
Stephen.
Let me give you some quantifiable data, because I know that we talk about these and kind of money gets transferred, but how much? How many incidents? Well, in Canada alone, according to the Canada Anti-Fraud Center, and these are up-to-date numbers as of March 31st, there were 32,442 instances of fraud reported simply because of related COVID incidents. And of those, there were 29,513 victims. And the amount of money that was lost just from having COVID phishing schemes was close to 8.17 million Canadian dollars. And so far, from the beginning of COVID, there has been a loss of $125 million due to fraud. So now that you have those numbers, and now that you know the number of cases that one must investigate, this is a huge problem. And it's gone down since the beginning of COVID, but it's still going on. It's still preying on our most vulnerable people in this nation. Do you have any idea of what the outlook or what the impact has been in the UK?
The numbers, I think, are about the same in terms of relativity. There is a massive disparity between the amount of fraud by numbers and by monetary value. In comparison, if you look at the amount invested or the amount invested in terms of security, cybersecurity prevention, it's minute compared to the actual.
So what you're saying is people are not investing in the security they need, and the losses are like huge. It's not comparable.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I don't think it's. Yeah, in a way, yes, or not investing enough, both in terms of technology and also human resources. So there's a massive human resource shortage in cybersecurity space. So, for example, I'm plucking these numbers out of the air now. For example, if there was £500 million worth of, or $500 million worth of cyber fraud, cyber crime value. Well, that just went off. Cyber crime proceeds. The equivalent investment in terms of cyber security resources would be what? Probably 10 million, 50 million. So almost 10% of that. You mean
like less than 1%?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So it needs the extra investment, both in terms of money and into technology and into human, resources. Yeah. So I think the human resources space is probably more prevalent than the technology itself. But the technology helps, all the automation, right. All the detection, automatic detection, and things like that. So that's the technology is there. So it's just you need the people to look at the
right. You need the people.
That's it.
Resources rather than technical, because the technical is going to be there. It's always going to be growing. Yeah. So yeah, you go, guys. Cybersecurity is a very good area to look into if you want to get yourself in there with the job. So yeah, plenty of the opportunities there. So yeah, tell me more about the attacks. I mean, there's certain types of attacks. I know there's something called DOS or DOS, and there's SQL injection. These type of terms, people like, what the hell are they? So in terms of those type of attacks, could you explain some of them? You heard of the DOSS, right?
Yeah, DDoS or DOS is a distributed denial of service. So basically, that is when an attacker sends a huge amount of requests to a web server, whether from a single point or multiple points, multiple sources to a single web server. And then that web server is trying to try to service those requests. Trying to give them,
and it takes it down.
Give them web pages, for example. But there's millions of requests all at the same time, and it's a bit like a waiter trying to serve 500 customers all at the same time. Is my analogy. So you right. Think about how where's that waiter going to go? He's going to
and it'll just literally crash the server.
Yeah, literally crash the server.
Okay, so that kind of denies that service, which means if you're running an online business, then you're basically screwed, because you won't be able to take real legitimate orders. You're just getting requests which can't be served, and your whole site gets shut down because the server crashes.
That's
right?
a good point that you made there. It is basically like a waiter. Right? Or better yet, a fast food takeout where you have 500 orders come in all of a sudden, and the fry cook looks at the order sheet and just throws up his hands and walks out.
That's it.
Right?
Exactly.
It's like, I give up. I can't do this.
I'm out of here.
That's it. So, that's a similar analogy. Yeah. So, but most of the DDoS protections now are provided as long as you're using cloud services, most of the protections are provided by those cloud service providers.
All right. So they have protection in place.
They have protection in place, so that you shouldn't need to worry about that much. But most of those cloud service providers are working on a shared responsibility model. So you also have some responsibility of knowing which traffic is legitimate and which one is an attack. But they will do their best to filter out those DDoS attacks.
Yeah.
But if you're hosting your own website, you better,
That's right. So if you're hosting your own website, you better check that. But Yao, you're the one who has actually sort out the stuff on the website. And I remember in some of the scripts that you put in place for the Apache server, and Apache is basically the web serving part of the server. And you put in scripts there, say, oh yeah, allow all traffic, but block North Korea. I remember.
That's right. Yeah, it's more of a configuration rather than a script. It's just a configuration option in Apache, which you can say, look up these IP addresses if these IP addresses belong, because each country has blocks of IP addresses. You see, and if the IP address happens to be in that block which belongs to North Korea, Russia, Vietnam, whatever it is, I can define in the configuration of the web server saying, right, if it's Vietnam or North Korea or Russian, just block it straight off. But obviously you don't want to deny them the content that you've made, so you might want to just block them off on the admin interface, for example. Where you create your content, you can just block them off from that, but still allow them to hit the main site exactly where the content is actually served. So that's the type of configuration that helped with the Winston's website.
So explain a little bit about the SQL injection. What's that? SQL. That's something I've heard. Is this what's it called? Query language? What is it called?
Simple query language. It's a very old language. It's used to query databases.
Databases.
Exactly, select certain bits of data from a database and present it out, type of thing. So, and what SQL injection is when you can, let's say, for example, that you have a web page which has some fields that you can enter data into. You can enter in commands in those fields and send it to the website, and the website will try and use that data against that database.
Right. So it's basically those fields that you put into the web page or web form that goes into a web server running the or SQL server, right? A database. And when you type in those commands in those fields, right? So a hacker would find a vulnerability for a certain SQL server / website, and they'll use those vulnerabilities and type in a code into those fields, press enter, and you're already in.
Yeah.
And once you're in,
if you're not in, you can just probably do something malicious. For example, you can just drop the database, which means to delete the database, for example, or you can inject data into your website. So, for example, I can put in profanities into your content, for example, and then somebody can browse to that particular page, and that same profanities popped up, as a content. So, the way they can stop that is to, how would you say, sanitize the input. So if the field is meant to take in a name, it should only take in a name. If the field is meant to take in a date of birth, it should only take in a date of birth and nothing.
Numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
Only,
so
no
code. It shouldn't accept any code at all. It should be, sanitized, escaped, or whatever it is that they do. So that's clean when it goes into the web server. When it's processed then and put against the database, then it wouldn't execute that bit of it wouldn't be treated as code to execute. So,
all right. So with those types of attacks, are there any other attacks which are we're seeing more of? And we touched on ransomware earlier, where everything is getting encrypted. But what about other attacks? Are they just kind of just in the news only, or what are you seeing a lot in your line of work?
A lot of it now, in order to attack a service directly, not an individual, a service, for example, your website or some other company's website or government website, we're seeing attacks relating to remote code execution, RCEs. And what that means is, let's say a vulnerability has been discovered in one of on a software, for example, a Java. Latest one has been a Java log4j, for example. And apparently you can send in a request, a carefully crafted request, so that it executes a bit of code, right? Which can, for example, download an extra piece of malware onto your web server, and then you can get it to execute it so that it runs commands as and when you want.
All right.
So with all the protection, with all the firewall protections
hacking
in place and all that in place, you can. It's just, if the software behind it, if there's a piece of software that has a vulnerability discovered and people know about it and start attacking it, they can still get in that way. Then you see, so if you think you've got all the protections in place, you're kind of you got that wrong mental attitude.
You need to double check, and double check every other week.
That's being published on a daily or weekly basis, and make sure that you are not running any of those vulnerable pieces of software, for example.
Okay.
So those
right. So that's the kind of stuff you've seen a lot of now, is kind of that hacking where you're getting people or hackers trying to get those pieces of code to automate and auto execute remotely, that kind of stuff, which is again is as people go back to work, our personal computers will be offline anyway, and then people going to work. Now we see a shift, more people go, or more the attackers are going back to the company sites to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so to all our viewers and listeners, how can we, as normal people with normal computers, how do we protect ourselves? Do we actually install kind of like software, malware, anti-malware? Do we go out and buy routers with firewalls? What kind of advice would you give for ordinary people?
I would say, obviously, if you're with an ISP which provides the router or the router which should have firewall built in, then obviously make sure it's configured correctly. It should be configured correctly out of the box. You shouldn't need to do anything with it. But if you've bought your own, make sure you have the firewalls up and running, and change any default passwords.
And also the latest firmware.
That's it. Exactly.
Updates,
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. If you don't need to run any like websites behind that firewall, don't bother opening up any ports or things like that. Just close all the ports and use it as a standard router.
I remember back in the day when we had routers, we had to open certain ports to allow certain games to run, right? But now there are a lot of gaming routers. When you play a game, it will detect that game's ports. Those is it called RPMT ports or whatever ports that they need? TCP and IP ports. It will detect that game's ports, and the router will automatically maximize and output those data out, rather than you trying to configure the router itself. It will automatically do that for gaming routers. Stephen, have you heard of any of those gaming routers out there?
Yeah, actually, one of the ones that I came across at CES just a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, was actually this face hugger looking thing from Asus. And that actually had a lot of these features built in. It was constantly updated. It uses some sort of, I think they work with TrendNet. I'm not 100% sure, but it would actually allow new firewall definitions. It would start to block certain IPs and blacklisted information. So routers like that, including the ones that are from Amazon, the Eero, as well as the Google Wi-Fi, NS Wi-Fi, they all have updated definitions in the background that constantly scan for these vulnerabilities and update accordingly. Now, Yao, you were speaking earlier about cloud. Now, cloud in definition is actually a little bit vague for a lot of the consumers out there. When we mention cloud, were we talking about cloud as in Cloudflare for your DNS, or were we talking about Amazon AWS, which can serve your server and Azure from Microsoft, or were we talking about something else? Because I wanted to get a little bit of clarity on that, because not a lot, when we say cloud, it's like, okay, is that like Dropbox and Google Drive? Like, what are we talking about here?
In the context I was speaking, it was more around servers. So
okay.
More cloud, more Amazon AWS, where obviously as a systems engineer, you would set up a server, virtual server instance inside Amazon AWS to serve your web pages, for example. In terms of Cloudflare and Dropbox, obviously. Cloudflare does provide some protections in terms of actually that does provide some DDoS protection as well,
yes.
And also how do you call it, a bot protection. They do bot protection as well, where you have robots trying to, for example, what was it? Scrape those.
They automated
scrape the websites for NVIDIA graphics cards. Remember?
Yeah,
scalpers. That's right. Yeah, scalping bots. That's what it's called. I forgot what they were called.
Okay. So could you use AWS? Like, I know that a lot of ISPs are not ISPs, but hosting companies are starting up using cloud services. It's something that they can scale into. They can sell packages, and they can control their costs because they can offer a $7 package or $1.99 hosting, and you get X amount of compute power, X amount of storage, and they can scale that back if demand is low. But can you use service like that? And because I used to use a hardware server with Cloudflare. Can cloud work with that cloud? Like, is that double protection, or is that is that like weird?
You can use it. You can use it for double protection.
Is it slower or kill performance?
From experience, Cloudflare is a good service. Don't get me wrong; it's a very good service in terms of the features they provide. But when we were using them, they were slightly unreliable. They did have some downtime. When they were being used in critical times, such as the pandemic.
Okay, so the caching wasn't as reliable as you wanted to on a high performance, fast response, many pages served type of web page, like an e-commerce site, for instance, right, where you need the information immediately.
Yes, in a way, yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but their services, I think, is easier to use, easier to set up, easier to use than AWS services, because AWS, you really need to know what you're doing.
Yeah, I remember there's a plugin for WordPress, or even for not Shopify WordPress integrations, where if you're setting up an e-commerce store and you plug that all in, or even WooCommerce, you just install it. You set check WooCommerce, and then it would actually do all the caching for you. But that concerns me when you said that it's slightly unreliable, because if you're relying on your business to have 100% uptime, you're getting all the pages served, and if someone comes across a white page or a page that's not loadable, you've lost that customer.
That's it. Exactly. I think it was just a one-time unreliability, or actually it happened twice, to be honest with you. And then it was not only just the reliability, it's also because Amazon offered similar or same services, but obviously you really need to know what you're doing to set it up, and we didn't want to double pay or have two suppliers which can essentially supply almost the same functionality with a bit more configuration in terms of AWS cloud service. because we're an IT company, obviously we know what we're doing, and we set it up. If you're not as technically tech savvy or tech knowledgeable to set up your own AWS services that provide the same similar services as Cloudflare, then you would use Cloudflare because it is easier. I mean, don't get me wrong, they provide really good service for for the majority of the services that you would want to probably protect.
Okay, so like in terms of configuration and everything, I know that a lot of people want to use their own, they want to spin up, they want to install WordPress by themselves and everything like that. And that's great. Like good for them. Learning something new is very important. A lot of people started up blogs during the pandemic. And we were talking about SQL injection, exploits, which are actually quite a lot more common than we realize, because a lot of these templates that people find beautiful and they want to start their blog on, they have a contact page.
Yeah.
And that contact page is potentially very vulnerable. Are there any tips and tricks that you can see for, making those contact pathways a little bit more robust, or should people just delete that page altogether?
Whether it's WordPress or Joomla or what else is out there, there's another one. Joomla, WordPress,
Drupal,
Atlassian.
There's
Atlassian. Atlassian, and there's another one I can't remember what it's called now. But Drupal, that's right.
Drupal. I think it was called Drupal.
I would suggest use official plugins. It's the third-party plugins which are the problem. So I would use
most of the
exactly,
problems.
I would use official plugins provided by obviously the platforms themselves. But if you need to use third-party plugins, check their reputation and whether it's safe to use and things like that. It's pretty difficult how to judge.
And get regular updates.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure the plugins are kept up to date. But it's difficult to check, the reputations of those plugins really.
Yeah.
But that's the main thing really. But if you don't need to use the plugins, don't use them, because that, like I said, that's where the majority of the vulnerabilities are is in the plugins, because a lot of third-party plugins, or number one, most of them could be open source, which obviously divulges the code, and or the developer who's developed the plugin, he may be good, but at the end of the day, he may not have time to have tested every single attack vector.
Yeah.
Or it becomes obsolete.
Yeah, or it becomes
and
obsolete.
No longer.
That's it.
Becomes obsolete. Yeah.
That's
all right. So program is an important part of a lot of people don't realize, and you see apps and you see websites and just the front end, right? So there's a lot of stuff happening in the back end, and if you give someone a piece of code, they're probably thinking, "Oh, what the hell's going on here?" But how hard is programming really? I mean, is this something that you can learn and develop? Are there any tools which can help you understand a bit about the programming, and is it really hard to get into? So especially building apps and websites and stuff like that. We mentioned earlier about the content creation, the Joomla, the Drupal, of course, WordPress. So tell me what's your insight on that?
To me, if I'm trying to simplify it, I would try to simplify it into kind of almost 3 steps. It's quite easy to say basic, intermediate, and then and then I wouldn't say full on professional, but decent, I would say.
What's the kind of popular language these days?
What the cool kids doing?
Is this something simple? Yeah, the cool kids do.
I think the cool kids are doing JavaScript. Or ECMAScript, because of all the. It mainly stems from obviously the front end design, right? So where people have done HTML programming. I wouldn't say HTML is really a programming language. It's more of a definition of what you want to display.
Was it PHP was a big thing? Is it still a big thing?
I don't think it's not that big. It's big, but it's not as big as it was, mainly because of JavaScript the evolution of JavaScript, because JavaScript back then was used to display pretty graphics and have real-time interaction, type of thing. Right. So from there, it became more of it now evolved into an additional thing, which is back-end code now. So where JavaScript used to do front end, now it can do back end, data processing, databases, and and all that.
What about HTML5?
That's not programming
as well. I mean, does JavaScript?
HTML is not a programming language. It's a language to define what you want to display. If you think about it,
Mark.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
H1 display as big capital letters, isn't it? So what I'm talking about programming is more logic. Saying if true, false,
true and false.
If it's this, zeros, then do this. If not, do something else. That's right. The basics of programming. Being able to do logic behind it, and then and that's the very basic level, very very basic level.
Yeah. Well, what's the with of course you got the 3D printer there and all those Arduino and Raspberry Pi. What language do they use for those? Because a lot of people now are playing around with those little toys.
It's using C.
Is that? Oh, C, like really? That's complex. C is a complex language. Yeah, it's not easy.
But I would say it's complex.
But mind you, they use a framework to make it easier, right? So tell to all the viewers what is a framework?
A framework is a collection of related libraries to help you, to do that particular task. So, for example, let's take Bootstrap, which I think every programming, web programmer should be familiar with. That is a framework where it is used to display, pretty graphics on your web page. This button should look, this color, showing this particular text at this particular size, and you just use that to help you define that button in more simpler ways, rather than having to programming the whole thing out.
It's almost like this framework is like a tool for potential programmers or developers to help them bring up the coding, the graphics, much easier for them to play with, right?
Yeah. It's packaged together.
Whereas before, when you're talking about 20, 30, 40 years ago, when programming, it was just little pieces of lines of code. But now you're getting stuff with the framework to make it look visually easier for you guys to program.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's the very high level, terms of it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Cool. So programming is another field which you guys could get into. There's a lot of people developing apps, whether it's mobile, web, and I see a lot of especially with on the phones, kind of web apps and games and things like that.
There's a lot, obviously. Like I said, there's a lot of there's different levels of it. There's basics where you're doing just simple, data capture and displaying, pretty pictures, and then next level you're begin to handle data with the databases, for example, and then further than that, then you're doing maths, data science, statistics, and and things like that.
So science. Weather predictions and stuff
AI,
like that, right?
it's
and what we call unfolding proteins.
Exactly,
Yes, that's a mad science. That we can need to cover that topic another time. All right, so I was talking to Stephen the other day. I mean, about the algorithms that Google and YouTube use, and I have to say it's really scary what they can do with it. So tell me, what is an algorithm, on any ideas on how they work, and are bots very similar? Are they algorithms and stuff like that? So before we start with then Stephen, tell us your experience about algorithms on YouTube and Google and stuff like that.
That's first. Actually quite a simple one for me, because I'm a fan of the process of uploading and having videos go viral, if you will. But in a sense, it's actually expected outcomes, because if you upload a video to YouTube actually knows frame by frame, line by line, what your video already has. in it. So if you try to trick it with a description or tags or a title that doesn't match the content, you will get a lower rating, mainly because people will see the content, realize that this isn't actually matching. The thumbnail and the description and everything don't match. So YouTube will start to take your content away because it's deceitful. So if for those people that are creating content that is that matches the title, that matches the thumbnail. And that's why you see a lot of creators, they'll start with a title and a thumbnail before they even start pressing the record button. That's why that content gets the rankings. That's why a Mr. Beast gets what he gets, which are the tens of millions of views, because he's stuck in a cemetery and he's been buried alive. And he's stuck in the cemetery, buried alive in the video. Because YouTube is like a child. It expects what it expects. It's a bunch of inputs and a bunch of outputs. And the expectation is that you will feel something and you will be engaged. And inside your video, which is really interesting, is that if you have a YouTube channel, you'll see something called the engagement graph. Usually they look like a hockey stick. So it kind of comes out like this for the first few seconds, and then it drops right off to 10% in oblivion. So that's basically the audience telling you that your content doesn't meet any of the criteria and it's not engaging. So what a Mr. Beast does is he'll start here, he'll drop off a little bit, but then he'll drop a carrot, drop another carrot, drop another carrot. He's building a story throughout so that by the time you get to the end, all these payoffs happen and then you get another spike. So it's very scientific. Mm-hmm. It's an algorithm that's basically like a child. You feed it inputs and then you get a certain outcome. And to most people, it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Actually, it does. And that's why people are getting success. And that's why, it's a,
So that algorithm is for YouTube and Google and stuff like that. But are there other algorithms, that would do certain other things?
I think what Stephen's referring to could be machine learning.
It is more machine learning. Yes,
that's it. So you feed in data, and then you put it through statistical analysis, and it has lots of starting points, and then it eventually finishes to one thing which is kind of it's familiar with, and it's using obviously those algorithms to say, right, is there you've got this word you've got these words in your titles, is it mentioned anywhere? Is there pictures of it anywhere in the video? Is there anything relating, anything that relates to those words at all? It's doing multiple things at the same time. Whether it's audio, what you're saying, you can imagine that the YouTube algorithm is probably translating, or rather, I would say transcribing, isn't it? Transcribing your video.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is probably turning that into words, right? And it's picking out those words and making sure that those words matches the video, and then as well as that, those words are matching the title, has some relation to the title as well, and then the title then with every frame, I can imagine with every frame there's every frame of the video, it's saying, right, what's in that frame? Is there a boat?
Yep.
Is there a boat in the title? Is there a boat in the transcription?
Oh,
is there a cemetery? Is
yes,
he really
exactly.
in the dirt?
That's it. Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, it's among us in here.
And you know what's going to happen?
It's guys
if this video, like what you're explaining here, basically is like an AI machine learning device, or a like a cloud-based entity, if you will, is taking algorithms to find words to put together information that it then processes. So it's actually using algorithms rather than it itself being an algorithm, which is really scary.
Yeah. That's it. Exactly. It's able to, use algorithms within algorithms. It's
a neural net.
Yes. Yeah. Literally.
Oh,
that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. That's what machine learning is. Because if you think about it, it's what our brains are. It's some connected little cells, isn't it? If you think about it. So that's what. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Neural nets.
But yeah, that's how I see. That's how I see that the YouTube algorithms working anyway.
Yeah, so algorithms, AI, machine learning, and then that's, again, well, from what you explained, different to bots. Bots are scripted programs, I would say. They are then, they've got a certain job to do.
They are more
such as what you
simplified.
mentioned
Yeah,
about
they are,
scalping,
they are
right?
more simplified. They are there to they are there to do one job. Yeah, they are scripted to do one job only. I would like to say one job only. For example, scalping bots. That's there to scalp, to scrape hardware, computer hardware shop
Off Amazon.
PS5s.
Oh, Amazon, exactly. Yeah,
NVIDIA
trying to
graphics
find
cards.
the cheapest and first available RTX 3080s back in the day, back 2 years ago, for example. When I was
got
trying-
one. I got a 3060 Ti. It was on sale too. I got one.
Oh, did you get one? Well, like,
I just bought
recently?
it yesterday. I actually used
What?
I
You
used
didn't tell me.
my algorithm, which is Honey, which could be one of our sponsors one day, but I used their price drop tool and I marked it for 10%, which is, I won't pay attention to it otherwise. So I found it on Amazon and I was like, oh my God, this is $100 less than everyone else. Buy. 3060 Ti, 8 gigabyte.
Wow.
Done. It's on its way.
Nice,
Finally.
Nice.
2
I
years.
need to get one. I need to get one.
Yeah, I'm still
Wow. I
waiting
need to
for
get
myself to
one.
buy a 3000 series RTX. I still haven't bought one yet. I might as
I
well
have a
wait.
1080.
Hey, Yos, wait. You might as well wait because
the 4000 series
40
is coming
series
out,
is coming out this year, and you have the 7000 Radeons also coming out this year. But if you are going to get the 3000 series, you might as well wait or get a really cheap secondhand one because now we're going to get to see a flood of cards coming from all the X.
I have a
machines.
1080. That's 5 years old.
yeah,
I
watch
don't
out for
care. I'm getting a new card.
Yeah, I got 1080 as well.
I did have a 1070.
You say
but it's
that
not there
the second-hand cards coming in from X miners, but surely they would have moved their operations out of China and into other countries rather than selling.
No, those are the big mining farms. I'm talking about the individuals who have mining rigs. They probably, there's still a small, I would say probably less than 2 to 3% of people still doing it. But in the grand scheme of things, we're still talking probably tens of thousands of people up there in the whole world. They have their own mining machines, and they're looking at the value of Bitcoin or the cryptocurrencies, plus the current prices of fuel, electricity. It doesn't match. It's just pointless to mine a home these days. The electricity cost is too much. You get the noise, you get the heat, blah, 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 and it's fuel costs, so on. So they don't bother now. So imagine those people with 8 graphics cards. They want to get rid of them, right? The only problem with those cards is that because when you're doing crypto mining, it's on load, GPU on load 100% of the time for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're going to get a shorter lifespan, yeah. Rather than getting like 5 years use out of it, you might only get, say, 2 years use out of it, or possibly 3 if you're lucky. And then you expect to pay. If it's brand new, costing you $500 US, I wouldn't pay more than $200.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
They're not reliable
or less,
anymore.
because
yeah.
they're not reliable anymore, and you might get heat problems.
Yeah.
Definitely,
I only
heat
want an
problems.
RTX to play games. Not mine. Give me a gaming rig.
And as I said, Stephen, you mentioned about the sponsors. So yeah, we are looking for sponsors.
Graphics cards.
Definitely.
Throw them at
if you
us.
like our content,
Shower us in
graphics cards. Graphics cards, we need graphics cards. But if you like our content, of course, give us a shout. It's at our podcast show at gmail.com, and you can email me or Stephen. And of course, any sponsors will help us run the show, give you the exposure that you need, and it'd be great to reach out to all your potential customers out there. All right. So we've covered programming, we've covered hacking and cyber, security, and of course, how we started, how Winston and of course my brother Yao started with servers
and 3D printing,
computers and games and that
3D
kind of stuff.
printing,
yeah,
And 3D printing,
we'll talk about
and all that kind of stuff. So
in another show.
Yeah, well.
In another show.
Don't call me an
definitely,
expert because I've literally just started 3D printing 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? So I'm a very, very green, so to say. Yeah. So
yeah. It's all a learning process. I mean, even some of the stuff I do with the mics and the whole podcasting. I mean, I'm used to streaming, I never used to monitor my audio. I said, hey, who cares? I just go on stream. But now I got to get the audio right and stuff like that. So with the better mic, thanks to Stephen, I should be getting, a lot more better voice sounding.
You sound very
for the
presidential.
podcast. So
very presidential.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely hope you enjoyed this podcast. It's been a fascinating insight into the world of the back end. Of course, this topic area is huge, and of course we only touched on a few things of the items, and I think we could revisit. If you want us to revisit, leave us your comments and let us know, and of course email us at it's our podcast show.
I'd like to kind of reiterate the importance of obviously keeping yourself secure in terms of on the internet. So make sure your antivirus is up to date, your system's patched and up to date, all the software you use is patched up to date, and look out for those suspicious emails.
Yeah,
don't be a statistic.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, because they could just pretend to be you. So
yeah, okay, so I think that's a wrap for us. But so if you want to reach out to us, I'm at Winston Chim at Twitter, and of course on Instagram at Winston Chim.
You can find me at Stephen Fung on Twitter and on Instagram. I am not the fight director for several shows from Hong Kong. I'm not that guy, but I do get invited to his parties, and someday I will partake in those invitations. What about you, Yao?
You can find my Twitter at Yao_Chim, or on Instagram as quoc.y.chim. Yep.
See? We are brothers. We are. We've got the same surname.
That's it. Exactly.
Not just beer brothers.
Okay, on that note, we all see you guys in our next podcast. So thank you.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.